So the first thing you're going to want to do when you're cutting a part to length is you're going to use the height gauge to scratch a little mark on where you're going to cut. So you go over here and then you bring it down, make sure that's all. So you bring it down, make sure that's clear. Bring it down to where it's on the ground. You can see that it's 0. You want to zero these out. And then we're going to say we're going to cut it 2 inches or so. So we'll go up, and you can see here is like the point. It's going to be like the 10th place. These are going to be the hundredths. Then the little ones are going to be in the 1,000ths. So you go up. You watch this. And so we're going to go, we're going to go 1.5. So now we're at 5. We're approaching 5. And so when it hits the 0, we know that it's at 5. So we take it and we just drag it along there. So now we have a mark right there. Okay, now that we have our mark, the first thing we're going to do is now we're going to put it into the chuck. So and you want to make sure it's nice and tight. It doesn't have to be super tight, but it's got to be able to stay there. And you want it to be sticking off a little bit, so that way you don't want to be too close to where you put the bit in risk of getting hit, and you don't want it too far off, so it's going to be wobbly when it starts spinning at 1,000 RPM. Close it, and the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure our bit here is level. So to do that, you just go over, and then you go to the front here, and then you can see here that it is currently level. So if it weren't level, you would untighten this, and you would use this here to twist it to raise it up and down. You tighten again, and then double check it. Okay, so now you can see here, this is our mark that we're going to cut. And we don't want to cut on the line, because if we cut on the line, that's going to be a little bit too far or too short. So what we got to do is we got to bring this back down here. We're going to move it over. We're going to line it up. And then we're going to, and so that way you can see it right there, that it's just, hold on. You see that the corner of it is right on the edge of it. So that way we know we're cutting it in the right spot. Yeah. And now we gotta back it up so when it starts spinning, it doesn't hit it. And so now what we do is we apply some WD-40 to it so it doesn't get too hot. Close this, make sure we're wearing our safety glasses. Then we start it up. Now you want to make sure it's spinning towards us and not away from us, so that way the bit actually cuts it. And typically for this kind of cut, we would spin it at 1,000 RPM. And so now what I'm going to do is when I get up to speed, I'm going to slowly move the carriage forward to get the initial groove going, and then after that you can go a little bit faster. So now we're at 1,000 RPM. I'm going to start moving it in slowly. And every once in a while you want to add some more WD-40 on it. Then keep going in nice and slowly. Go back and forth a few times to smooth it out. Take it on and back, stop it, and then there you go. Take it out of the chuck, and there you have it. It's cut to length. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do to our part here is we're going to turn it down to a certain diameter. All right, so to do that, usually a designer would give you a certain depth they want it because it's supposed to fit a certain size bearing, but for this purpose we're not going to do it because all we need to know is I'm just teaching you how to actually turn it down to that diameter. So we're going to put it in. We're going to put it in kind of far because we're not turning it down just yet. We're going to take off the parting tool. We're going to move our carriage back out of the way some. What we're going to do now is we're going to come up here and we're going to get our center drills. And our center drill goes here. Make sure it's tight. Then you're going to hold this back some. And you're going to move it on over. So it's pretty much you want. Make sure it's locked in with this handle here. Then you're going to close it. You can do that. And then same thing, about 1,000 RPM for this too. And so then start it up. And you just slowly move it in. It up, pull away, and we're gonna stop it. And so now we have this little basically pilot hole for the side of it. So what we do with that is we come back to our tailstock here. We're just gonna remove this tailstock piece. We're gonna put it up there. We're gonna make sure this is out again so we can latch. And we're gonna take this, which is called a live center, and what this is gonna do is we're gonna put that there. Come back to that piece. Move it out. It's tight. Then we're going to move our live center over, lock it in. And so what the live center does is, for particularly long parts, you will have to have it like out here and stuff. And when it's out that far, it's going to be spinning around. So you would have a live center to keep it nice and stable at those high RPMs. Typically, oh hey. So now what we do is we take our other tool. This is the one that we'll be using here. As you can see, it's got the flat side right there. And so we're going to put it on over here. So another thing that you have to watch out for is if your tailstock can sometimes get in the way of your carriage and you won't be able to go all the way to the end of the part. So to do that, it's a pretty simple fix. You just back this up and you extend this out further. Right there is probably good. So now you have room to go route your part. So again, you want to just put it forward, make sure that it's centered properly. In this case, it's a little bit too tall. So we're just going to loosen that, tighten it down. And that looks like it's good. So now let's say we have to turn it down to, currently from face to face it's 0.5. So let's say we want to get it down to 0.4. Well, actually not 0.4, 0.35. And so to do that, you would first take the difference between the two, which would be 1.5, and then you would divide that by 2, because when you take it like material off from one side, it also covers the other, so that's why you divide it by 2. And so then we want to take off 0.75 we want to go 0.75 in this direction. And to do that, we have here our ticks on this right here. And so what you want to do is you want to get your bit to touch the face, and so that way it's at its 0. And then you would take this little dial here.
Things over there that you're like, what in the world? I just thought
Zero, like that.
stencils that might have been belonging to you guys as I was kind of trying to organize.
So now we're just going to move it off to the side here. Close this. We got to make sure our WD-40 is ample for this because this takes a lot of heat, or produces a lot of heat. So yeah, we're going to start it up. Make sure that live center is engaged, which we spin at the same speed as the part. So now we're just going to move it over nice and slowly. And so that was just an arbitrary distance that we just traveled, and it's supposed to have traveled. Should have just cut off the edges, so that was basically 0.5 in diameter. Of course, the ticks down here are they can vary quite drastically, so you shouldn't rely on them, which is why we have something called a digital micrometer. Well, it would appear that our digital micrometer is out on vacation, so we're just going to sub in calipers instead, which are not as accurate, but they'll do for this. So just move it over, just rub off any material there, zero out your caliper, just want to move it over, up, down, get sure. So right now it's 0.475, which means that we need to go in 0.375 more, which would be 37.5 ticks on our little dial down here. So we're going to bring everything back. Set it up again, re-engage the live center, reapply WD-40, move it in, 30.75. We can go 30 for now, but then we'll check it and make sure. So then just nice and easy over. Stop it. Then we're going to check the length again with the diameter. Currently, we are at 0.40. We're at 0.403, which means that we're pretty much there. And so in this case, to get a nice finish onto it, we're going to use the auto feed feature. And so we're just going to move it in just 1.5 ticks, so that way we can just smooth it all out. So we're going to turn it back on. Put our WD-40 on, and then we're going to use this handle down here. This turns on our auto feed, which will move the carriage this way at a constant rate. And so we're going to put it down, and now you can see that it's moving. Just barely taking off stuff from the surface. So you don't want it to keep feeding into the side of it, so you want to be ready to stop it and pull it out. We're going to go a little more fast because it didn't really touch it. There we go. Yeah. Just do that a few times, depending on how smooth you want it. Alright, so now I'm going to pull it back, stop it, measure it. And there we go. We got 4 right there. Alright, Next, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna teach you all how to drill and tap apart. And to do this, we're gonna like use the little pilot hole that we made last time, and we're going to take our live center out here. We'll put this part back in. And to this, you just shove it in there. It's a friction lock, so it just slides right in. Clean off that right there. And we're just gonna put a 1/4-20 tap on it because that's just an easy number to do. So we take our number 20 drill bit here. Wait, no, not number 20. It's a 732, which works. And again, the size of your drill bit will directly affect how deep your threads are. So if your tap here needs to like sustain a lot of force, you're obviously gonna want a deeper thread to it. Now that we got our 7/32 drill bit on here, which will give you we won't give you a very deep thread, which is why it's best for like, if you're just trying to like put 2 plates together, that's good because it's like time efficient, and then like for like the manufacturers and designers, and it doesn't put as much strain on the machine or our taps. So what we do here is we're gonna get this carriage back up out of the way here. We're gonna make sure that our tailstock is at the 0 mark, so we know how deep it's gonna go in. And we're gonna line it up over here. Make sure to lock it in. And now, drilling is long and tedious and it requires lots of WD-40. So drilling we can spin at like, I usually do it around 1500 RPM. And the way you do it is, you go in a little bit until you feel resistance and you pull it out some, you clear the flutes and you do it in, you go in and out, and just consistently clear the flutes until you get to the depth that you want. So I'm gonna do that real quick. And so at first it's going to feel kind of easy to go in because of our center drill here. It made a good opening in there, so it was pretty easy. But now as you go further on, it's starting to get more difficult, so let's pull it back now. Let's clear off the flutes, put some more WD-40 on it so it doesn't get too hot. And go back in. That's probably deep enough for this purpose. So we'll turn it off, I'm gonna stop it. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull it back, lock it down. We're gonna take out our drill bit here and put it away. And instead, what we're gonna grab is our 1/4-20 tap. And make sure it's in there nice, snug. All right, so now the next thing you need when tapping is something called Tap Magic, which okay, Tap Magic. And so you put this onto the tap, and also just a warning, this stuff smells really bad, so be sure to wash your hands good after you use it. And so that should suffice for that. And so for this, for like anyone who's new, we won't be tapping the parts with the machine on. So you're just gonna shut it off for safety. You can flip this up. And now, what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna take this, make sure it's back all the way. And we're gonna take it over here and slide it up next to it. And now what we're gonna do, we can move this in as well. Now we're just going to put this up to it, and we're just going to spin this. Once it engages, we know it's in. We're just going to spin it and tap it. You should probably keep a hand on this here so it doesn't like tilt like that. You want to be sure to keep a close eye on the tap itself, and if you start to see it twisting in there, you want to either tighten it, or if the actual flutes itself are starting to twist, that means it's going under too much force and you probably hit the end of your your hole, and you need to stop or like clear the flutes and make sure everything's all right. And so here, that's a good space to stop, because you have to also clear the flutes for like taps as well. It's like a lot more frequent as well. And so you just take a WD-40 brush, clear it off, and put it back, and keep spinning. Oh, and so you see here, now it's spinning with the part, so that means we probably hit the end of the hole. So back it up, take it out, and then we can inspect, see if the flutes are in there. Looks like it is. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take it out. We're gonna do a little test to make sure it's all good. Yep, looks like the top went all the way to the end of the hole. So now we're gonna find a quarter 20 screw and make sure that it works. All right. So we got our quarter 20 screw here. We're gonna take it apart, and then, yep, voila. There you go. So that's how you would tap. So to face it, we're just gonna take that out of here. So the facing is where we just get a nice face. Okay, it was like the equivalent to getting a factory edge on a mill part. So take this, put it on, and then we got our facing tool, which is, where is it? Here it is. This is our facing tool, and this one mounts like this onto the lathe, whereas everything else has been mounted on this side of it. So like all of our different tools, we got to make sure that it's at the right height, which it is. And so now we're just gonna back it up, close it, turn the lathe back on, start it up. This is also something that you do at like about 1,000 RPM. So now, WD-40, just go into it nice and easy. And then if you want to make the edge not too sharp, you can just move it into the edge a little bit, and that'll give it a nice chamfer so it's not too sharp. And then there you go. That's how you face things. And typically you would face something if your height had to be exact, so where you would take your parting tool and you would cut it just a little bit off of the height, and then you would get the rest of the distance with the facing tool, because this can do like a lot more fine adjustments on it. All right, and that is a quick crash course on how to use the lathe.